What's up, everybody? It's Logan Fast, your favorite student physical therapist from Ohio University. And tonight I'll be demonstrating how to properly perform a two-person transfer, starting with the patient lying supine in a bed, to sitting in a wheelchair, to lying supine on the floor, and then returning. Safety precautions include using appropriate manual contact techniques as well as proper body mechanics to minimize injury risk for both the healthcare professional in charge, the second helper, and then the patient themselves. During each step of the procedure, it's important to make sure that the wheelchair and all of its components are in proper place. For brevity, in this video, I'll be stating the proper components of the wheelchair with each phase of the transfer. Finally, patient instructions include having the patient cross their arms or actively assisting them to do so. If they can't, this will help stabilize and keep them comfortable during each step of the transfer procedure. Alright, for the first step of the transfer procedure, we'll be moving the patient from lying supine in the bed to seated in the wheelchair. What I'll first do is instruct or assist the patient to cross their arms. Next, I'll place one knee on the bed and I'll slowly raise the patient up with one hand underneath the neck and the other one stabilizing the lower back region. From there, the healthcare provider situated at the trunk will reach underneath the patient's axilla or the armpits and grip onto the patient's opposite wrists. The other healthcare provider at the foot of the bed will face the patient, placing one hand underneath the distal thigh of the patient and the other hand underneath her calf region. On the verbal cue lift, both of us will lift the patient up to a height that clears the wheelchair, which is firmly locked in place. So on 3, 2, 1, lift, and then we'll move over the patient and place her into the wheelchair. Next, we'll be transferring the patient from sitting in the wheelchair to lying supine on the floor. So again, the very first thing we'll do is have the patient cross their arms if they're able to. I might assist them as well, while I reach underneath the patient's armpits and grip onto the opposite wrist. The other healthcare provider will again face the direction of the transfer, squat down using proper body mechanics, and reach one hand underneath the patient's distal thighs and the other around her calf or lower leg region. On the verbal cue lift, both of us will lift the patient up to a height that clears the wheelchair. On move, we'll move over in the direction of the transfer, and then finally we'll lower the patient to the ground. On 3, 2, 1. Finally, we'll lower the patient slowly down to the ground by placing one hand behind the neck and the other hand supporting the lower back lumbar region. Good. When moving the patient from lying supine on the floor to sitting in the wheelchair, the first thing we'll have the patient do is raise up from a supine position. To do this, one hand will go behind the neck and the other one will go behind the lower back region to support her upper extremity as she rises up. Next, I'll instruct her to cross her arms. I'll reach underneath her armpits and grip onto the opposite wrist, while the other healthcare provider will come up, bend her knees, and then reach with one hand underneath the distal thigh and the other hand under the leg region. On the verbal cue lift, both healthcare providers will assume proper body mechanics and raise her to a height that clears the wheelchair. On the verbal cue move, we'll move over to the wheelchair and then we'll lower her down. So on 3, 2, 1, lift, move, lower. In the final step of the transfer procedure, we'll be moving the patient from sitting in the wheelchair to lying supine on the bed. The first thing we'll do is I'll instruct the patient to cross their arms once again as I reach underneath the armpit region to grip onto the opposite wrist of the patient. The other healthcare provider at the lower extremity will kind of squat down to assume proper body mechanics and reach with one hand underneath the distal thigh and the other underneath the leg. On the verbal cue lift, both healthcare providers will lift the patient up to a height that clears the wheelchair, and then we will move and set her down onto the edge of the bed. So on 3, 2, 1, lift, The healthcare provider at the trunk will raise their nearest knee onto the bed, and then with another additional verbal cue, that healthcare provider will lower the lower extremity, and then we'll move her to the center of the bed. And then you can uncross your arms. Finally, we're going to lower down to supine, so I'm going to support one hand behind the neck and the other in the lower back region.